Justin Trudeau's fundamental transformation of Canada continues. I'm Brian Lilly with the Rebel.media. After, 150 years almost, we're about to get a new way of choosing justices on the Supreme Court of Canada. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced this, not in Ottawa, not in Parliament, not before a group of MPs, but in the pages of the Globe and Mail. That's right, our Prime Minister penned an op-ed for Canada's establishment newspaper, telling the world that we were changing how we appoint justices to the highest court in the land. Do you remember when it used to be horrible when Stephen Harper announced anything outside of the parliamentary precinct? Now we've got Liberals announcing deficit numbers at town halls in Vanier. We've got changes to the Supreme Court being announced in the paper of record for Canada's Laurentian elite. So what's going on here? Well, according to the Prime Minister, he's going to appoint a panel. The government will appoint some members, others will be suggested and put forward by legal groups like the Bar Association, law societies, and so on. And then this expert panel will draw up a short list of names to provide to the Prime Minister. He'll then choose. There's a few problems with this. One, they're adding new criteria, including bilingualism. Two, getting rid of regional representation, such as a requirement to have someone from Atlantic Canada, let's say. And three, they're going to actually consult with the Supreme Court Justice. Let me go through each of these, but let's start with the beginning. What's the requirement in the Supreme Court of Canada Act for being a justice on the highest court? It's pretty wide open and it's pretty simple. It says clearly, any person may be appointed a judge who is or has been a judge of a superior court of a province or a barrister or advocate of at least 10 years standing at the bar of a province. So that leaves things pretty wide open. But Justin Trudeau wants to add to that, including bilingualism. From his op-ed, he writes, "The 9 women and men who sit on the Supreme Court bench must be jurists of the highest caliber. They must be functionally bilingual, and they must also represent the diversity of our great country." Interesting. We'll deal more fully with the bilingualism portion in a moment because that's going to exclude an awful lot of people that aren't from the Montreal-Ottawa corridor. But he also says that this is open to any lawyer or judge across the country. Now, the vacancy that is about to come up, that he's striking this panel for, that he's asking people to apply for this job, is to replace Justice Thomas Cromwell, a jurist from Atlantic Canada appointed by Stephen Harper. Tradition has that there's at least one member of the Supreme Court from one of the 4 Atlantic provinces. There's 2 from out west, 3 from Ontario, 3 from Quebec. Justin Trudeau wants to do away with that. He says they can be from anywhere in the country. That led Conservative justice critic Rob Nicholson, a former justice minister himself, to point out something rather obvious and, well, depressing if you are a Liberal from Atlantic Canada and want to retain that seat. In a statement, Nicholson wrote, "Every single federal member of Parliament from Atlantic Canada and every single premier is a Liberal, and collectively they have failed to guarantee their region's representation on the top court in the country." Now, Justin Trudeau's requirement for functionally bilingual means that, well, there's fat chance that they're going to come from Atlantic Canada, or if they do, the pool's going to be so small as to be laughable. In fact, this bilingualism requirement, as I said, shrinks the pool down to just the Montreal-Ottawa corridor. The Supreme Court hears cases on immigration, on criminal law, on civil law, on taxation. Each area of the law has its own particular jargon in both languages. You could be a top criminal lawyer, be able to argue criminal cases in both official languages, but could you hear a taxation case without an interpreter, without translation? Probably not. Very few people would be able to do that. But that's what they're looking for now. Is that person really going to come from Shediac? Are they really going to come from Moose Jaw, Red Deer? No. We're going to be restricting to Montreal and Ottawa. And that, my friends, is a shame. The other portion that is disturbing on this is that while Atlantic Canada or the Prairie Provinces or British Columbia may see a reduction in representation on the highest court, Quebec will never see that. They are the only province that has their representation on the nation's highest court written into the Supreme Court Act. That's right, Quebec, 24% of the population gets at least a third of the 9 judges at all times. From the Supreme Court Act again, let me read. At least 3 of the judges shall be appointed from among the judges of the Court of Appeal or of the Superior Court of the Province of Quebec or from among the advocates of that province. Now, when a Supreme Court appointment comes open from Quebec, this expert panel that Justin Trudeau has constructed, he says he's going to reconstruct it so that Quebec is more fully represented on it. Essentially, Quebecers will choose Quebec judges, and people from all over Canada, including Quebecers, will choose the judges that represent the rest of the country. And geographic diversity be damned. Kim Campbell, by the way, the former Prime Minister of Canada, the unelected, only female Prime Minister this country's ever had, the one that was a Conservative and now sucks up to Liberals at every turn, she's the one that's going to head up this panel. Finally, let me point out a really disturbing idea put forward by the Prime Minister in his op-ed about consulting with the Supreme Court Chief Justice. He wrote it right in there that this is going to be part of the process. After the shortlist is drawn up by this expert panel, given to the Minister of Justice, well, that minister will then turn to the Chief Justice from the op-ed. Then, once the shortlist of candidates has been compiled by the advisory board, the minister will consult the Chief Justice, the applicable provincial and territorial attorneys general, members of the House Justice and Human Rights Committee, the Senate's Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee, and opposition justice critics. Look, consulting with parliamentarians, not a problem. That should be a bigger part of this. And I applaud the government for the transparency they say is going to come from this. But going to the Supreme Court Justice and saying, who should we appoint to your court? That's a no-no. Remember the kerfuffle when Stephen Harper and Beverly McLaughlin were at odds over the appointment of Justice Nadon to the Supreme Court? Harper wouldn't take her call because he said it would be inappropriate to consult the Chief Justice on an appointment to her bench. And so it would be here. But Justin Trudeau's not interested in that. Just like he's not interested in finding the best legal minds, he wants bilingual minds. Just like he's not interested in respecting the geographical diversity of the court, he wants the Laurentian elites from the Montreal-Ottawa corridor. This is part of his fundamental transformation. I warned you this was coming before the election, and as I always say, elections have consequences. This is just the latest of them.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.